It is true that the Montreal Canadiens have themselves what a lot of folks would consider a good prospect pool. They've got young guys that have already graduated from being prospects into being top-tier contributors at the National Hockey League level. Cole Caulfield, he's a 50-goal scorer. Yuri Slafkovsky is a first overall beast. Ivan Demidov was a Calder finalist. And Lane Hutson was a Calder winner. But it needs to be said that even though the Canadiens have good young pieces, they have a talented team in the now, there still is room for improvement. And this is why we're going over a name that Kent Hughes would supposedly be very interested in bringing on to his Montreal Canadiens team. Let's talk today about Calgary Flames defenseman Zach Whitecloud. Now, you may be looking at this right away saying, wait a minute, where is this coming from? Well, we had ourselves Marco D'Amico, who spoke on the Star and D'Amico show a few weeks ago regarding Zach Whitecloud. That's still someone that D'Amico thinks the Canadiens have coveted in the past, and D'Amico also thinks that's the kind of player that they would like to add still. Could we see Kent Hughes set his sights on a now Calgary Flames defenseman? A Stanley Cup champion with the Vegas Golden Knights, a guy who was an original misfit, if I'm not mistaken. He did play a game with the Vegas Golden Knights in their very first season, after finishing up in the NCAA. Zach Whitecloud may be seen as an unnecessary addition to the Montreal Canadiens and their long-term future, quote-unquote. Because you think about it, he's 29 years old, 6'2", 218, a right-handed D-man. I don't know about you, but I think my mental version of the Canadiens' right side includes names like Noah Dobson, who is already signed for the long term. It's going to include David Reinbacher, and then you probably have room for one or two more guys. Hudson, Gooley, and Matheson are all signed for a while, and those are all lefties, so maybe by default, if you get another really nice left-handed defenseman, one of these guys, like Elaine Hudson, transitions to playing the right side full-time. That's where the conversation gets a little bit muddy. The Habs have a lot of guys under long-term deals, by the way. And if you think of Dobson and Reinbacher as the only two guaranteed locks long-term on the right, it becomes pretty tight pretty quick. But that's the thing about Zach Whitecloud. This is a guy who is 29 years old, so he's not necessarily being added to a team because, he's a long-term piece. He also has a contract, which sees him making $2.75 million till the end of 2028. That's a reasonably short-term amount of time for a guy to be brought onto a team in a winning environment and potentially used as another Stanley Cup winning piece. Whitecloud was never the best of the best defensemen in the Vegas Golden Knights system. He averaged 15-ish points a year, and even in this most recent season, Vegas traded him away, and then they still went to the gosh darn Stanley Cup Finals. Now, it should also be noted, Zach Whitecloud did produce a lot more with Calgary in the 31-game sample that he had with them, with an A on his sweater, than he had in any of these Vegas Golden Knights seasons. It makes sense because, hey, Calgary just traded away Rasmus Andersson. That's the deal that was made in the first place. Whitecloud is now being used in a primarily top four role, whereas with Vegas, he wasn't really given consistent playing time throughout the years because, why would they? They had everybody else that's all so good. Pietrangelo, McNabb, Shea Theodore, etc., etc. Whitecloud was, at best, fourth or fifth best on the team on any given night on D. In Montreal, though, I would argue that Whitecloud probably brings the same level of talent, if not a bit more, than a guy like Alexandre Carrier. If you move Hudson over to the left side in place of Jayden Struble, and then you replace Struble with a guy like Whitecloud, you have an all-natural 3 left, 3 right D-core, and it actually looks pretty good. Zach Whitecloud might not cost a lot either. You look at the trade that was initially made where the Calgary Flames acquired him. Obviously, Whitecloud was not the biggest piece in that move. The Calgary Flames acquired Whitecloud and 2 draft picks for Rasmus Andersson. And that is how everything went down. It's why Whitecloud was able to get a decent amount of time playing in the Calgary Flames organization. I mean, the trade was made, January 17th? So there was a lot of time, even before the trade deadline, for this deal to be signed, sealed, delivered. And now, thinking about what the Canadiens could do, Zach Whitecloud could be a pretty nice intermediate time-based replacement for one of these left-handed guys who's being forced to play on the right. Now, long-term, obviously, I'm not too sure if a guy like Whitecloud fits the entire picture here, mostly because David Reinbacher is getting better. He will continue to grow and develop and inevitably be a National Hockey League level athlete. He already had a pretty interesting cup of coffee with the Habs this most recent season, and his AHL play had gotten more solid over the season too. Reinbacher is going to be fine. Is he 5th overall caliber like he was supposed to be back when he was drafted? Maybe not, but still, he'll be an option there. We know Noah Dobson ain't going anywhere, and then we know all these left-handed guys in Hudson, Gooley, and Matheson aren't going anywhere either. So for the Montreal Canadiens, it's like, even though Zach Whitecloud doesn't seem like a long-term fit, the Habs just made the gosh darn 3rd round. You can make these bets where it's like, okay, we'll get a guy who only has a year or 2 left on our contract because we know he is going to improve the quality of our team enough that it hopefully makes an impact in the playoffs. If Montreal trades for Zach Whitecloud, let's say they win the Stanley Cup in 2027, who cares about getting a guy who's older and who is going to be on an expiring deal soon? Just get the gosh darn guy and win. That seems to be the philosophy behind a Zach Whitecloud-like addition to the Montreal Canadiens in 2026-2027. So, for Marco D'Amico to go out there and talk about this on his podcast, obviously it makes sense in my mind. It's not guaranteed that it's going to work, but hey, if you're a team that was literally 1 round away from the gosh darn finals, you can afford to make these bets, even though your team still is in a rebuild-esque type of mode. I would argue that the Canadiens are just barely exiting the rebuild here, and that a 3rd round appearance in the Stanley Cup playoffs was admittedly more of a gift rather than an expectation. I mean, let's be real, this entire season was great. 100 points out of Suzuki, 50 goals out of Caulfield. Demidov was amazing. Slavkovsky really amped up his game too. Hudson, super, super good. That guy's on pace to winning a Norris at some point. And then you have everything else that happened too. This team is awesome, but they are just exiting a rebuild. Even if that is the case, they've already shown that they're talented enough to justify getting some win-now pieces, even if it might not necessarily go with the traditional rebuild mode, you can say. With all that said, you can let me know your thoughts in the comments section. If you're a Calgary Flames fan, what do you want from the Montreal Canadiens in a Zach Whitecloud trade? We know the Flames are trying to be competitive themselves. It's why they traded away draft picks that they had for Simon Nemec out of the New Jersey Devils. That's a pretty big win-now type of move, too, even though Nemec is young, so there is an emphasis on the long term that can be explained there as well. But Zach Whitecloud is a win-now piece, too. Is Calgary interested in trading one of these away after just making a Nemec trade, which indicates positive win-now type of direction with that team? So if you're a Flames fan, let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. If you're a Canadiens fan, thoughts on D'Amico's report and whether or not Whitecloud would be a positive addition to the Canadiens. I hope you enjoyed this Vidisha Schrolls 99, and bye.